Hi, I'm Dr. Kirsten Lewanek coming to you from River Valley Chiropractic, where we teach you to move well so that you can live well. And I've been having some patients coming in who play tennis and different kinds of sports where they use their wrists and do a lot of wrist flexion and wrist extension. And they're developing tendinitis type symptoms or inflammation and pain in one side of the wrist or another. In particular, this patient is having pain on the outside of her wrist, and it's painful when she's doing this type of motion with her tennis racket because there's a lot of wrist motion. And so today we're going to cover some different stretches that you can be doing, as well as strengthening exercises as hand and wrist therapy for wrist pain if you're experiencing wrist pain either on the outside of the the inside of the wrist or the outside of the wrist, because there's a bunch of tendons that run along the back and are your extensor tendons, and then you have tendons that run along the front that are your flexor tendons, and those can get inflamed and irritated and cause pain in the wrist. Typically that doesn't require an x-ray or any type of medical type therapy in terms of like injections or that type of thing. You can lots of times resolve that pain and make that feel better by doing some stretches and strengthening exercises prior to then maybe seeking medical attention if it was continuing to get worse, or you started to have a worsening of symptoms, that type of thing, like numbness or tingling in the hand or anything like that. But today we're just covering, pain in those tendons, like overuse tendinitis type pain. And so we're going to cover a few stretches for the hand in order for that. So first of all, I'm going to have you interlace your fingers together in front of you, and we're just going to rotate the wrists. So I'm just making a circle with my wrists, and I'm going right now to the left. And you can do that about 15 times, and then you can switch directions and go the opposite way. And then once you've done both directions, left and right, you can do some of this type of motion as well. You can even loosen your wrist. Just moving around through range of motion, making circles, figure eights, just getting some motion in there in the wrists. Once you've done a couple sets of 15 of those, then we're going to move to doing some wrist extension stretches. So I'm using a table here about waist height, and I've turned my arms outward, and I'm leaning into my wrists and creating a stretch on this side, if you can see that, of the wrist. So we're going to hold that stretch for about 30 seconds. Once you've held that stretch 30 seconds, then we're going to change to flexion. So we're going to flex the wrist. So you're going to put, instead of palms down, you're going to put the back of your hands down, and again, press down into the table. And we're going to hold that for 30 seconds as well. After you've done extension and flexion, next we're going to do pronation and supination. So with your elbows at your side, you're going to just twist at the wrist, keeping the elbow still. So we're supinating and pronating. Again, this is just running through really range of motion. Again, you can do 15 reps each direction. And then after that one, you can take a ball. It could be a tennis ball, it could be a racket ball, it could be a soft stress type ball. There's all different balls, but I would start with one that has a little bit of give. Tennis ball has some give to it. This one doesn't have quite as much give, but it has a little bit. And you're gonna ball squeeze in your hand. So again, 15 reps, and I'm ball squeezing. And you can start with a softer ball and work up towards a harder ball. So those are going to be our hand therapy stretches. The interlaced fingers, running through range of motion, circles, running them around like that. The extension, flexion, supination and pronation, and ball squeeze, okay? Those are going to be your wrist stretches. Then we're gonna go to some wrist strengthening, and it's gonna be the same types of motions, okay? So I'm gonna sit down on a chair here, and then my arm is hanging off the table. I just have a light dumbbell here, a couple pounds. Have my palm facing up, and with that dumbbell in my hand, I'm gonna do wrist flexion. Again, you might hear some, like my wrist is cracking right now. I've had previous wrist injuries, so there may be some scar tissue, that type of thing in there can make some cracking noises, or your wrist just might crack when you do this motion with some weight. Again, 15 reps. And then we're gonna turn it over, palm down, and starting down in wrist flexion, we're gonna come up into wrist extension. Again, doing 15 reps. And if you don't have a dumbbell at home, you can use a soup can, a can of soup, hold a can of soup. Or if you have any TheraBands at home, you can use TheraBands. But for this demonstration, we're using a 2-pound dumbbell. Then we're gonna do supination. So I'm holding the end of the dumbbell, still the wrist is off the end right here, and I'm gonna hold the end and rotate, supinate, palm down to palm up. So we're going through the same motions that we stretched the wrist, and now we're doing strengthening. So that's supination, and then you can change it to start palm up and do pronation. So I'm starting palm up and then going palm down and pronating. So we're going through all the different ranges of motion, and again, that ball squeeze is also going to be help with strengthening as well. So we covered some stretches in order to start stretching and elongating the tissue, stretching out some of that tightness in there with stretches, getting the range of motion back in the wrist. Then we moved to some strengthening exercises. Again, with the strengthening exercises, 2 sets of 15 reps when you're doing the exercises is about what you want to shoot for. Afterwards, after any type of physical therapy, stretching, strengthening exercises, or activity, if you're playing tennis or whatever you're doing with your wrist that's causing pain, you're going to want to go ahead and do some ice on there just to help with the inflammation, because tendinitis is inflammation in the tendons. So that will decrease the inflammation after you perform the exercises. Again, you want to make sure you have something between the ice and your skin, and ice for about 20 minutes on, and then you can take it off for 40 minutes. And then if you want to do it again, you can ice it a second time for 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off. And then I'd also recommend, if you are doing a lot of activity, if you're a tennis player, that sort of thing, maybe looking into, for a temporary, while you're having some discomfort in there, either doing a wrist type splint that will help support those tendons, or you can also look up videos on KT taping for the wrist that you can utilize as well. That's going to give you more of your range of motion than a wrist splint will. The combination of those things, doing the stretches, the strengthening, supporting it with a wrist splint, doing the ice after activity, is going to help over time start to decrease that inflammation. Inflammation in general can be anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks when it starts to have irritation. But of course, if you're continuing to do the activity that causes the pain, so for example, tennis, if you're continuing to swing a racket despite having pain, that may take a little bit longer to resolve. But over time, that inflammation should start to decrease, and that should start to feel better. So these are just some stretching and strengthening exercises that you can do for the hand and wrist for wrist pain, either on the lateral side or the medial side. If you have any questions about that, feel free to pop that into the comments below. I'm sure you probably know somebody that has or is struggling with wrist pain, even if it's somebody that works at a desk continuously and just needs some stretches for the wrist. Go ahead and share this video with them so that they can also benefit from the stretches and strengthening exercises that we're sharing here on this video. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and while you're there, there's a bell notification button. Go ahead and click that on, and then you'll get notification of all our upcoming videos as well. Again, I really want to thank you for joining me today, and go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you found this video valuable. Thank you again. Hope you have a great day. I'm Dr. Kirsten Liwanag, coming to you from River Valley Chiropractic. Bye-bye.